Sit down, bitch. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Brad Hutchins' hand was already moving toward her shoulder, ready to shove her back onto the bar stool. He outweighed her by 80 pounds, had 6 inches on her, and wore his lieutenant commander rank like armor. Alexis Chen didn't sit down. Instead, she stood up slowly, deliberately, her dark eyes locked on his flushed face. And when she reached into her jacket, Brad Hutchins' world was about to shatter in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. But before we get to that moment of reckoning, make sure you hit that subscribe button and follow this story all the way to the end. Drop a comment with what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The Iron Anchor wasn't the kind of place where careers ended, but tonight would be different. Alex had been sitting alone at the bar for 43 minutes, nursing the same club soda, her eyes on a Kindle that she hadn't turned the page on in 20 minutes. To anyone watching, and plenty were, she looked like every other junior contractor killing time before heading back to base housing. Cheap blazer from Target, sensible flats hair, pulled back in a ponytail that screamed, "I gave up trying." Forgettable. Invisible. Exactly what she needed to be. "You gonna drink that or just let it sweat all over my bar?" Murphy called from down the counter. He was 72, built like a fire hydrant, with forearms that told stories his mouth never would. Former teams. She'd made him the first week. "I'm good, Murph. Thanks." He nodded, moved away, but his eyes had that look. The one that said he knew. Not what she was, maybe, but that she was something other than what she appeared. The front door banged open. Cold November air rushed in, carrying the sound of male laughter and the unmistakable swagger of officers who'd already had 3 drinks somewhere else. Brad Hutchins led the pack. He was 38, but carried himself like he was still 25 back when his body did what he told it to, without complaint back when his career trajectory pointed up instead of sideways. 6'2", 220, with shoulders that strained against his civilian button-down. His hair was regulation short, graying at the temples in a way he probably thought made him look distinguished. It didn't. It just made him look tired. Behind him came his usual crew. Lieutenant J.G. Marcus Lee, who laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. Ensign Tyler Shaw, still baby-faced at 24, trying too hard to fit in. Lieutenant Sarah Pack, the only woman in the group who'd learned to be one of the boys by laughing at jokes about other women. Murph, the usual. Brad's voice carried that particular quality of men who'd never been told no with any real consequence. "And keep 'em coming. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" Murphy didn't look up from the glass he was polishing. "Marcus here just got his orders. He's heading to San Diego, gonna be a SWAS instructor." Brad clapped Marcus on the shoulder hard enough to make him stumble. "Teaching baby officers how to drive boats. Living the dream right. Beats another deployment," Marcus said, but his smile was uncertain, like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to be happy about it or not. They took the corner booth. Brad positioned himself where he could see the entire bar, the door, the bathroom hallway. Old habit, good habit. Alex noted it, filed it away. For the next 20 minutes, she listened. Brad talked about his last deployment, a routine patrol through the South China Sea that had turned into 8 months of watching Chinese warships through binoculars and pretending it was meaningful. He talked about the lieutenant commander who'd gotten promoted over him. Kid's 32. 32. I've got socks older than his commission. But he went to some fancy leadership course, wrote some bullshit paper about adaptive leadership in complex environments. And now he's wearing oak leaves while I'm still wearing bars. Tyler tried to be supportive. "You'll get it next board, sir. Your record speaks for itself." "My record?" Brad's laugh was bitter. "You know what my record says. It says I'm competent, reliable, a solid officer. You know what that means? It means I'm invisible. It means I show up, do my job, and nobody notices because I'm not diverse enough, not connected enough, not whatever enough they're looking for these days." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I don't think..." "You don't think what?" "That the Navy's changed, that we're not promoting the best people anymore." Brad leaned forward. I've got 18 years in, 18 years of doing everything right. And I'm watching people with half my experience zoom past me because they check the right boxes. Maybe they're just good officers, Sarah said quietly. The table went silent. Brad's eyes narrowed. You saying I'm not? I'm saying maybe the Navy's looking for different qualities than it used to. Sarah's voice was steady, but her hands were clasped tight in her lap. Maybe being competent isn't enough anymore. Maybe they want people who can adapt, who can lead in new ways. New ways. Brad drained his bourbon. You mean the woke ways? The ways where we're more worried about pronouns than readiness, where we're putting people in positions they're not qualified for because of what's between their legs instead of what's between their ears. Murphy's hand paused over the glass he was drying. His eyes flicked to Alex, who still hadn't moved, still hadn't reacted. Sir, that's not fair, Tyler said. Some of the best officers I know are women. Some? Brad agreed. Some. And you know what they all have in common? They earned it. They didn't need the standards lowered. They didn't need special accommodations. They met the same bar everyone else did and cleared it. He gestured with his empty glass. But now we've got people graduating from Annapolis who can't pass a regular PT test. We've got surface warfare officers who've never stood a real watch. We've got... His eyes landed on Alex. We've got contractors making 6 figures, while real sailors are on food stamps. The air in the bar changed. Alex felt it like a pressure drop before a storm. She didn't look up, didn't acknowledge, just turned a page on her Kindle, even though she hadn't read a word in an hour. Hey! Brad's voice got louder. Hey, I'm talking about you. Murphy moved down the bar, positioning himself. Brad, leave her alone. I'm not doing anything, Murph, just making an observation. Brad stood up, and the alcohol in his system gave him that liquid courage that feels like confidence until the consequences arrive. Public bar. Public conversation. He crossed the floor with the rolling gait of someone who'd spent time on ships, his center of gravity low and stable. When he reached Alex's stool, he leaned against the bar beside her, crowding into her space in a way that was calculated to intimidate. You work at Norfolk. Alex looked up slowly. Her eyes, when they met his, were dark brown and completely flat. No fear, no interest, no anything. I do. Her voice was quiet, Midwestern neutral, the kind of voice that telemarketers have carefully stripped of any identifying features. What do you do? IT support, database management. Brad snorted. Of course. And let me guess, you make what, 90-100K? I don't think that's your business. It's my business when I'm making 65 and doing actual work. He leaned closer. She could smell the bourbon on his breath, the cologne he'd probably applied 8 hours ago in his bathroom mirror. It's my business when people like you are sucking up defense dollars while real service members are struggling to pay rent. I'm sorry you feel that way. Alex turned back to her Kindle. The dismissal was absolute. This was a mistake. Brad's face flushed. From the corner booth, Marcus called out, Yo, Hutch, leave her alone, man. Come back and finish your drink. But Brad had already crossed a line in his head. He'd spent 18 years following rules, meeting standards, doing everything the Navy asked of him. And he was stuck, frozen, watching younger officers with less experience climb past him, watching civilians make more money, watching the world change in ways that made him feel obsolete, unnecessary, forgotten. And here was this woman young enough to be his daughter, making contractor money, sitting in his bar in his town, dismissing him like he was nobody. I'm talking to you. His hand moved fingers wrapping around her forearm. Not hard enough to hurt. Not yet. Just enough to assert control to make her understand her place. It's disrespectful to ignore someone when they're speaking to you. The bar went silent. Alex looked down at his hand, then up at his face. And for just a second, less than a heartbeat, Brad saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. Something predatory. Something ancient. The look a wolf gives before it decides whether you're worth the calories. Then it was gone, replaced by that same flat neutrality. Let go of my arm, please. Or what? The words were out before Brad's brain caught up with his mouth. You gonna file a complaint, call security. I'm a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy. You're a database monkey making bank off my service. Show some respect. Murphy's voice cut across the bar. Brad, last warning. Let her go. Stay out of this, old man. I'm not asking. Brad glanced at Murphy, then back at Alex. His hand was still on her arm. He could feel her pulse under his fingers. Steady. Slow. The pulse of someone completely calm. That should have been his second warning. Look, Brad said, and now he was trying to walk it back without losing face in front of his crew. I'm just saying a little respect goes a long way. A little acknowledgement of what people in uniform do for people like you. Is that too much to ask? No, Alex said quietly. It's not too much to ask. I appreciate your service. Now please let go of my arm. See, that wasn't so hard. But Brad didn't let go. Not yet. He needed the moment to last a little longer, needed his crew to see that he'd won this small battle. Maybe next time someone tries to have a conversation with you, you don't act like you're too good for it. Maybe you remember that. Alex moved. It wasn't fast, wasn't dramatic. Just a simple rotation of her wrist, a slight shift of her body weight, and suddenly Brad's hand wasn't on her arm anymore. He was stumbling backward, his wrist bent at an angle that sent bright sparks of pain up his forearm. What the? Alex was standing now, still calm, still expressionless. She picked up her bag from the bar, slung it over her shoulder. I'm leaving now. Please don't follow me. The pain in Brad's wrist was already fading, but the humiliation was just getting started. He could feel every eye in the bar on him, could feel his crew watching, could feel his authority, his dignity, his carefully constructed identity as someone who commanded respect, crumbling like wet sand. You just assaulted me. His voice came out strangled, desperate. You just assaulted a naval officer. Alex paused, turned back. I removed your hand from my body. That's not assault. That's self-defense. Bullshit. Everyone here saw it. Brad looked around wildly. She attacked me. I want her arrested. Murphy stepped forward. Brad, don't do this. Don't do what? Let some civilian contractor assault me in public. What kind of message does that send? Brad pulled out his phone. I'm calling the shore patrol. We're doing this officially. Tyler stood up from the booth. Sir, maybe we should just... Sit down, Ensign. That's an order. Brad's thumb was already moving across his phone screen. This is about respect. This is about the uniform. If we let people like her think they can put their hands on us without consequences, then what the hell are we even doing? Alex sighed. It was a small sound barely audible over the jukebox playing Lynyrd Skynyrd in the corner, but something in that sigh made Brad's skin prickle. She walked back to the bar, set her bag down, sat back on the stool. Okay, she said. Let's do this officially. Her tone had changed. Still quiet, still controlled. But there was something underneath now. Something that sounded almost like regret, or maybe pity. Brad didn't hear it. He was already talking to the duty dispatcher reporting an assault at the Iron Anchor requesting immediate response. When he hung up, he felt vindicated, powerful, in control again. They'll be here in 10 minutes, he announced to the bar. And then we'll see how tough you are. Alex said nothing. Just sat there, hands folded in her lap, looking at nothing. Marcus approached carefully. Hutchman, I really think you should reconsider. Just let her leave. We can forget this whole thing. Why? Brad's eyes were bright with alcohol and adrenaline. Why should she get to walk away? Why does she get to disrespect me and face no consequences? Because Murphy said from behind the bar, and his voice carried the weight of decades, you have no idea who you're fucking with. Brad laughed. What her, look at her. She's nobody. You should listen to him. Sarah had moved closer, her face tight with worry. Sir, I really think you should drop this. I'm not dropping anything. Brad turned to Alex. You're going to learn a lesson tonight. About respect, about consequences, about what happens when you put your hands on someone who's actually contributed to this country. Alex finally looked at him, really looked at him, and in her eyes, Brad saw something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. She wasn't afraid, she wasn't angry, she was sad. Okay, Alex said again. But before the shore patrol gets here, can I ask you a question? Brad crossed his arms. What does contribution look like to you? The question caught him off guard. What contribution? You said you've contributed to this country. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just curious what you think that means. Brad felt like he was being maneuvered into a trap, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. It means I've served for 18 years. It means I've deployed. It means I've led sailors in harm's way. It means I've sacrificed time with my family, sacrificed relationships, sacrificed a normal life, all in service of something bigger than myself. Okay, Alex nodded. And you think I haven't done those things? I think you sit in an air-conditioned office and reset passwords. Right. She looked down at her hands. And if I told you that you're wrong, if I told you that your assumptions about who I am and what I've done are based entirely on what I look like, on my age, on my gender, would you believe me? Prove it, Brad said. Show me your deployment orders. Show me your service record. Show me anything that says you've done a tenth of what I have. I can't. Exactly. Brad felt triumph surge through him. Because you haven't. Because you're exactly what I said. You are a contractor making bank off the backs of people who actually serve. The front door opened. 2 masters at arms walked in, their uniforms crisp despite the late hour. The lead MA, a first-class petty officer with a nameplate that read Rodriguez, scanned the room. Someone called in an assault. Brad stepped forward. I did. I'm Lieutenant Commander Hutchins, stationed at Norfolk. This woman, he pointed at Alex, attacked me when I tried to have a conversation with her. Rodriguez's eyes flicked to Alex, then back to Brad. Attacked you, how, sir? She grabbed my wrist, twisted it. Some kind of martial arts move. I want to press charges. Rodriguez pulled out a notepad. Ma'am, can I see some ID? Alex reached into her bag, pulled out a wallet, handed over a Virginia driver's license. Rodriguez examined it, then pulled out his radio. Control, this is Rodriguez at the Iron Anchor. I need you to run a name for me. Alexis Chen, Charlie Hotel Echo November, Virginia DL. He read off the number. There was a pause. Then the radio crackled, stand by. Brad watched Alex's face for any sign of nervousness. There was none. She just sat there, patient as stone. Rodriguez's radio crackled again. Rodriguez, be advised that name is flagged in the system. Before proceeding, you need to contact NAV Spec Warcom duty officer. Do not continue investigation until you've made contact. Acknowledge. Rodriguez's eyebrows went up. He keyed his radio. Copy, control. Can you provide the duty officer number? As he wrote down the information, Brad felt the first flutter of doubt in his stomach. NAV Spec Warcom. Naval Special Warfare Command. That was SEALs. Why would a database contractor be flagged in a SEAL system? Rodriguez looked at Alex. Ma'am, I need to make a phone call. Can you wait here? Of course. He stepped outside. Through the window, Brad could see him pacing, phone to his ear. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. When Rodriguez came back inside, his face was pale. Sir, he said to Brad, I need you to step outside with me. Why, I'm the victim here. Sir, please, just step outside. Brad looked at his crew. Tyler's face was worried. Marcus looked confused. Sarah looked like she already knew this was going to end badly. He followed Rodriguez into the parking lot. The November air was cold enough to cut through his bourbon haze. Rodriguez led him 20 feet from the entrance, far enough that no one inside could hear. Sir, I need you to drop this. Brad blinked. What? I need you to drop the assault charge. Go back inside, finish your drink, and forget this happened. Like hell. She assaulted me. I want... Sir. Rodriguez's voice was tight. I can't tell you everything, but I'm strongly advising you not to pursue this. Why? Because I just spoke to a full bird captain at Naval Special Warfare Command who told me in very clear terms that if you continue with this complaint, you will regret it for the rest of your career. Brad's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means that woman in there isn't what she appears to be. It means you've stepped into something way above both our pay grades. It means the smartest thing you can do right now is walk away. I'm a lieutenant commander. She's a civilian contractor. There's no... A black SUV pulled into the parking lot. No markings. windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. It parked directly under a light and two men stepped out. They wore civilian clothes, jeans, boots, tactical jackets. But the way they moved, the way they scanned the parking lot before approaching, the way they positioned themselves with natural fields of fire, these were operators. Special operations. The older one, maybe 45, with gray in his beard and eyes that had seen things most people only had nightmares about, walked straight to Brad. "Lieutenant Commander Hutchins." "Who's asking?" The man didn't answer. Just pulled out a badge wallet, flipped it open. "I'm Commander Hayes' Naval Special Warfare Development Group. This is Lieutenant Vickers. We need to talk." Brad's mouth was dry. "About what?" "About the woman you just assaulted." "I didn't. She's the one who..." Hayes held up a hand. "I don't care about your version. I care about shutting this down before it becomes an incident that affects national security. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back inside, apologize to Ms. Chen, and leave. You're not going to file a report. You're not going to talk about this. You're going to forget it ever happened. And if I don't," Hayes smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "Then I'll have a very uncomfortable conversation with your commanding officer about how you compromised an active operation, assaulted a naval officer, and created an international security incident. How does that sound?" Brad's brain was trying to process the words. Naval officer, active operation. She's a contractor. IT support. Is she? It wasn't a question. Lieutenant Vickers spoke for the first time. "Sir, we're giving you an out here. I strongly suggest you take it." "What is she?" Hayes studied Brad for a long moment. Then he pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen, turned it around. The photo showed Alex, but not the Alex from inside. This Alex wore a desert combat uniform, full tactical gear, a rifle held with professional competence. Her face was painted in cam patterns. Her eyes were hard. She stood with a group of other operators, all of them looking at the camera with that same 1,000-yard stare. "This was taken in Syria," Hayes said. 18 months ago. That's her SEAL team, her actual SEAL team." Brad's legs felt weak. "That's impossible. Women can't..." "Can't what, sir?" Hayes's voice was soft, dangerous. "Can't complete buds. Can't earn a trident. Can't serve in combat." He swiped to another photo. Alex receiving her trident from an admiral. Another swipe. Alex in jump gear exiting an aircraft. Another. Alex running a combat course. Lieutenant Commander Alexis Chen completed BUDS with Class 351. She graduated top of her class. She served 3 combat deployments. She's killed more enemy combatants than you've met in your entire career. And right now she's undercover working an operation that you just nearly compromised because you couldn't handle being rejected at a bar. The parking lot tilted. Brad grabbed the SUV for support. "She's a SEAL." "She's a SEAL? But she's... young female looks like a contractor." Hayes leaned in close. "That's why she's good at her job, Commander. Because people like you look at her and see nothing. No threat, no capability. Just another girl who needs to be put in her place." Brad was going to be sick. Rodriguez had moved away, giving them privacy. From inside the bar, Brad could hear music playing, voices talking. Normal people having a normal night, while his entire world was imploding. "What was the operation?" His voice came out as a whisper. "Classified. But I'll tell you this much, there's a Chinese intelligence operative working in the contractor pool at Norfolk. We've been tracking him for 6 months. Chen was about to close the net, and then you grabbed her, caused a scene, and almost blew her cover because you couldn't keep your ego in check." Brad closed his eyes. "Oh my God. Yeah, oh my God." Hayes took the tablet back. "So here's what happens next. You go back inside. You apologize. You tell her you had too much to drink and you were out of line. Then you leave with your friends and you never speak of this again. If I hear that you've told anyone about this, anyone, I will personally ensure that your career ends in the most humiliating way possible. Are we clear?" "I didn't know." That's the problem, Commander. You didn't know. But you assumed. You saw a young woman and you assumed weakness. You assumed incompetence. You assumed she was less than you because of what she looked like instead of who she actually was. Hayes's voice was hard now. And in a combat situation, that assumption would get you killed, would get your team killed. Do you understand that? Brad nodded numbly. I can't hear you. Yes, I understand. Good. Hayes stepped back. Now get inside. Apologize. And Commander, learn from this. Because the military is changing. The world is changing. And if you can't adapt, you're going to be left behind. Brad walked back inside on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. The bar was quiet. Everyone was watching. Tyler, Marcus, and Sarah were still at the booth, their faces ranging from confused to horrified. Alex sat at the bar exactly where he'd left her. Murphy stood behind the counter, arms crossed, face unreadable. Brad approached slowly. His hands were shaking. Ms. Chen, his voice cracked. I owe you an apology. She looked up at him, those flat, dark eyes that he now realized had been assessing him from the moment he walked in, cataloging threats, measuring distances, planning responses to every possible action, the eyes of a predator in sheep's clothing. I had too much to drink, Brad continued. I was out of line, way out of line. I'm sorry. Alex stood. She was a full head shorter than him, weighed maybe 120, soaking wet. And Brad now knew that she could kill him with her bare hands before his crew could get across the room to help. Apology accepted, Commander. Her voice was still quiet, still neutral. We all have bad nights. She picked up her bag, walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Can I give you some advice? Brad nodded, not trusting his voice. The world is full of people who don't look dangerous, who don't fit your idea of what a warrior looks like. Some of them really are harmless, but some of them, she paused, some of them are dangerous precisely because people like you underestimate them. The smart money is on assuming everyone is capable of surprising you. Then she was gone, the door swinging shut behind her. Brad stood in the middle of the bar, surrounded by people he thought were his friends, feeling more alone than he'd ever felt in his life. Murphy broke the silence. I tried to warn you. Yeah. Brad's voice was hollow. Yeah, you did. Outside, an engine started. Headlights swept across the bar window, then darkness. Sarah approached carefully. Sir, are you okay? Was he okay? He'd just grabbed a Navy SEAL. He'd assaulted a woman who'd served in combat while he'd spent his career driving a ship in circles. He'd compromised a national security operation because his ego couldn't handle rejection. No, Brad said. No, I'm not okay. He looked at his hands, the hands that had grabbed her arm, the hands that had tried to assert dominance over someone who could have broken him like a twig. From the corner booth, Marcus called out, "What the hell just happened?" Brad walked over, collapsed into the seat. His crew gathered around, waiting for an explanation. I just learned, Brad said slowly, that I don't know a goddamn thing about anything. And in the parking lot, outside in the back of a black SUV, Commander, Hayes looked at Lieutenant Vickers and shook his head. Think he'll learn from it? Vickers shrugged. Some do, most don't. Ego's a hell of a drug. Yeah. Hayes pulled out his phone, started typing a message. Control, this is Hayes. Incident contained. Chen's cover is intact. Recommend we pull her out tonight anyway. She's burned too much attention. The response came back immediately. Concur, extraction at Euro 200. Hayes looked at the bar, at the light spilling from the windows, at the normal people inside, living their normal lives, completely unaware that they'd just witnessed a ghost. You think she's pissed? Vickers laughed. Chen, nah. She's probably already planning her next cover identity. That's what the good ones do. They adapt. They move on. Unlike Commander Hutchins in there. Yeah, unlike him. They drove away, leaving the iron anchor behind, leaving Brad Hutchins to face the consequences of his assumptions, leaving Murphy to close up shop, shaking his head at the same old story, young men who thought they knew what warriors looked like, learning the hard way that warriors come in all shapes and sizes. And somewhere in the darkness, Alexis Chen was already disappearing, already becoming someone else, already moving toward the next mission. Because that's what operators did. They adapted, they survived, and they never ever let anyone see them coming. Brad sat in the booth long after his crew had gone silent, staring at his hands like they belonged to a stranger. The bourbon in his system had turned sour, churning in his gut with shame and disbelief. "Sir," Tyler's voice was careful, the way you'd talk to someone standing on a ledge. "What did those guys tell you outside?" Brad's laugh came out broken. "That I'm an idiot. That I just assaulted a Navy SEAL. That I almost destroyed a national security operation because I couldn't handle a woman saying no." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus leaned forward, his face pale. "What do you mean, a Navy SEAL? She's a contractor. You said she does a T. That's her cover." Brad's voice was hollow. "She graduated buds. Top of her class. 3 combat deployments, Syria, Yemen. Places I've never been and never will be." He looked up at Marcus. "While I was driving a destroyer in circles, she was hunting terrorists in the desert." Sarah's hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God." "Yeah." Brad stood abruptly, the booth creaking. "I need air." He pushed through the door into the parking lot. The cold hit him like a fist, but it wasn't enough to clear his head. Nothing would be enough. He'd grabbed a Navy SEAL. He'd called her a bitch. He'd tried to intimidate her, to put her in her place, all because she'd had the audacity to ignore him. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Report to Captain Vance's office 0800 tomorrow. Come prepared to explain tonight's incident. LCDR Morrison XO." Brad's hands shook as he typed back. "How did you know about—" The response came immediately. "Shore Patrol filed a report. Word travels fast, especially when Navspecwar gets involved." He leaned against his truck, pressing his forehead to the cold metal. 18 years of service. 18 years of doing everything right. And in one drunken moment, he'd destroyed it all. The door opened behind him. Murphy stepped out, a cigarette between his fingers, even though he'd supposedly quit 10 years ago. "You want to know something funny?" Murphy's voice was rough with decades of smoke and seawater. "I knew what she was the second she walked into my bar 3 months ago." Brad turned. "How?" "The way she moved, the way she scanned the room, the way she sat with her back to the corner where she could see both exits." Murphy took a drag. "You know how many operators I've served, real operators, not weekend warriors or wannabes. Hundreds, maybe thousands. They all have it, that thing in their eyes. Like they're always calculating, always 3 moves ahead. Why didn't you warn me?" "I tried. You weren't listening." Murphy exhaled smoke into the night. "You know what your problem is, Brad? You think you've got it all figured out. You think your 18 years and your combat ribbon make you something special. But that girl in there, she's done things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. And she did it before she was old enough to rent a car." Brad slumped against the truck. "I grabbed her, Murph. I put my hands on a woman, a fellow officer, someone who's served more honorably than I ever will." "Yeah, you did. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before Brad could answer, his phone rang. Unknown number. He considered not answering, but cowardice had already cost him enough tonight. "Hutchins. Commander Hutchins, this is Captain Sarah Vance." Her voice was cold enough to freeze salt water. "I'm reading a very interesting report that just landed on my desk. It says one of my officers assaulted a civilian contractor at a bar tonight. It also says that Navspecwar intervened to prevent an incident. And would you like to tell me what the hell is going on?" Brad closed his eyes. "Ma'am, I can explain." "I don't want explanations at midnight, Commander. I want you in my office at 0800, sober, with a very good reason why I shouldn't recommend you for court-martial." She paused. "And Commander, whatever you think happened tonight, I promise you it's worse than you realize." The line went dead. Murphy stubbed out his cigarette. "You should go home. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face. That look she gave me right before I grabbed her. She knew exactly what was about to happen, and she let it happen anyway." "Of course she did. She's a professional. She assessed the threat, determined you weren't worth the paperwork, and gave you every chance to back down. Murphy's voice softened. You didn't take those chances. Brad drove home in a fog. His apartment was the same as he'd left it. Dishes in the sink, laundry in a basket. Photographs on the wall documenting a career that suddenly felt meaningless. Him shaking hands with an admiral. Him on the bridge of his ship. Him with his division, all of them young and confident, believing they were making a difference. He picked up a photo from the mantel. His father in his Navy whites, 1975, fresh out of Annapolis. Captain Richard Hutchins, destroyer commander, retired after 30 years of distinguished service. Brad had spent his entire life trying to fill those shoes, and all he'd managed to do was trip over the laces. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Tyler. Sir, are you okay? We're all worried about you. Brad typed back, I'm fine. Go home. Get some sleep. But Tyler wasn't done. What she said at the end about people who don't look dangerous, it's got me thinking. About a lot of things. Like what? Like maybe I've been wrong about some stuff. Maybe we all have. Brad set the phone down without responding. He poured himself a glass of water, forced himself to drink it, then poured another. The alcohol was still in his system, but the fog was lifting, replaced by a clarity that hurt worse than any hangover. He'd assaulted a woman. Not just any woman, a decorated combat veteran, a SEAL. Someone who'd earned everything he'd only ever dreamed about. And he'd done it because she'd made him feel small, made him feel invisible, made him feel like all his service and sacrifice didn't matter. The truth was simpler and more painful. She hadn't made him feel anything. He'd done that to himself. At SO 300, Brad gave up on sleep. He showered, shaved, put on his uniform with hands that still trembled. Every ribbon on his chest felt like an accusation. The Surface Warfare Officer pin, the Navy Achievement Medal, the Iraq Campaign Medal for a deployment where the closest he'd come to combat was watching CNN in the wardroom. He arrived at Captain Vance's office at 07:45. The admin building was quiet, most offices still dark. But Vance's light was on. Her door was open. Come in, Commander. Close the door behind you. Captain Sarah Vance was 52 with silver threading through her black hair and eyes that had seen 3 decades of Navy politics. She'd commanded 2 destroyers and a cruiser. She'd been the first woman to command a carrier strike group, and she had exactly 0 patience for bullshit. Sit. Brad sat. Vance opened a folder on her desk. At 21:47 last night, Shore Patrol responded to a call at the Iron Anchor Bar. The caller you reported being assaulted by a civilian contractor. Is that accurate, ma'am? Yes or no, Commander? Yes, ma'am. The Shore Patrol ran the contractor's information and found a flag requiring them to contact NAV SpecWar before proceeding. Within 15 minutes, 2 DevGru personnel arrived and shut down the investigation. They also informed the responding MA that you had in fact initiated physical contact with the contractor, not the other way around. Accurate. Brad's throat was dry. Yes, ma'am. The contractor's name is Alexis Chen. Does that name mean anything to you? Not until last night. Vance pulled out a photograph. It was the same one Commander Hayes had shown him, Alex in full combat gear, standing with her team in the Syrian desert. Lieutenant Commander Alexis Chen, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, SEAL Qualification Class 351, Combat Deployments to Syria, Yemen, and Somalia, Silver Star for Valor, Purple Heart, Navy Commendation Medal with Valor Device. Vance's voice was clinical, detached. She's currently on temporary assignment to NCIS working an investigation into Chinese intelligence operations at Norfolk. Her cover identity is an IT contractor. Was an IT contractor until you decided to grab her in a public bar and blow 3 months of operational work. Brad felt like he was drowning. Ma'am, I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't bother to consider that she might be more than she appeared. You saw a young woman alone at a bar and you made assumptions. Those assumptions led you to put your hands on a fellow officer without consent. In the civilian world, that's assault. In the military, it's assault plus conduct unbecoming. Vance leaned forward. Give me one reason I shouldn't recommend you for court-martial right now. The silence stretched. Brad had no answer, no defense, no excuse that would matter. Finally, he said, "I can't, ma'am. I have no defense." Vance studied him for a long moment. "Do you know why Lieutenant Commander Chen didn't break your arm when you grabbed her?" "No, ma'am." "Because she's a professional, because she understood that defending herself would compromise her cover and potentially endanger an active operation. So she absorbed your assault, your verbal abuse, your attempt to humiliate her, and she maintained her cover identity." Vance's voice hardened. "She protected the mission even when it meant letting you violate her personal space. That's the kind of officer she is. What kind of officer are you?" "Commander." Brad had no answer. "Nav Spec War is pulling her from the operation. The Chinese operative they were tracking went dark the moment your little spectacle hit social media. Yes, Commander, your crew was filming. It's already circulating in Navy Facebook groups. The story is that some drunk officer tried to intimidate a contractor and got his ass handed to him. Congratulations. You're famous." Brad's stomach dropped. "Ma'am, I've spent the last 3 hours on the phone. With NavSpec War, with NCIS, with your CO on the Normandy, with the Admiral's Chief of Staff." Vance stood, walked to the window. "Everyone wants a piece of you. NCIS wants to charge you with obstruction. NavSpec War wants you investigated for compromising an operation. Your CO wants you off his ship, and I want you out of my command." "Yes, ma'am." Brad's voice was barely audible. "But—" Vance turned back. "Lieutenant Commander Chen has declined to press charges. She says, and I quote, 'He's an idiot, not a criminal. Let him learn from it.'" Hope flickered, small and pathetic. "She said that she did. Against my recommendation, against NCIS's recommendation, against every lawyer who's looked at this case. She's giving you a chance to salvage something from this disaster." Vance sat back down. "Here's what's going to happen. You will accept non-judicial punishment. You will attend mandatory EO training. You will see the base counselor weekly for the next 6 months. You will write a formal apology to Lieutenant Commander Chen, and you will never ever speak of this incident to anyone outside official channels. If I hear you've been talking about her, her cover, her assignment, anything, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your career scraping barnacles in Alaska. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, ma'am." "The NJP hearing is scheduled for 1400 today. You'll lose half a month's pay for 2 months. You'll receive a formal letter of reprimand in your permanent record. Your promotion to commander is dead. Your career as you knew it is over." Vance's eyes were hard. "You brought this on yourself, Commander. You grabbed a woman half your size because she wounded your ego, and now you get to live with the consequences." Brad stood. "Ma'am, may I ask a question?" "What?" "Have you met her Lieutenant Commander Chen?" Vance's expression softened slightly. "Twice. Once when she briefed me on the operation before going undercover. Once this morning when she came in to give her statement." "What's she like?" "Professional. Competent. Remarkably calm considering what happened to her last night." Vance paused. "She told me something interesting. She said you reminded her of her first platoon commander, guy who couldn't handle having a woman in his unit. Tried to make her quit, make her fail, undermined her at every opportunity. What happened to him? He's still in, still serving, still learning to be better," she said. "She didn't destroy him. She outlasted him, and eventually he came around." Vance's voice dropped. "She's giving you the same chance. Don't waste it." Brad left the office feeling hollowed out, empty of everything except shame. He walked across the base in the early morning light, watching sailors and officers go about their routines completely unaware that one of their own had just learned the hardest lesson of his life. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Sir, we need to talk, all of us. Can you meet at the food court at 1100? Brad considered saying no. Considered avoiding them, avoiding everyone hiding in his apartment until the NJP hearing. But cowardice had already cost him enough. "I'll be there." At 1100, he found his crew at a corner table away from the lunch crowd. Tyler, Marcus, and Sarah, all of them looking like they'd slept as poorly as he had. Tyler spoke first. "Sir, we saw the videos." "Videos?" Marcus pulled out his phone, turned it around. Brad watched himself on screen, drunk and belligerent, grabbing Alex's arm. Watched her execute that simple, elegant wrist release. Watched himself stumble backward, humiliated and furious. The comments were brutal. Another toxic officer who can't handle rejection. This is why women leave the military. Somebody needs to ID this clown and end his career. They already have, Marcus said quietly. Someone recognized your uniform, your rank insignia. By this afternoon, your name will be everywhere. Brad closed his eyes. Perfect. There's more. Tyler swiped to another video. This one was longer, filmed from a different angle. It showed the whole interaction, Brad approaching, getting aggressive, Alex trying to de-escalate, Brad grabbing her. But it also showed something else. The moment right before Alex moved, her eyes had changed. Just for a second, she'd looked at Brad with the flat professional assessment of someone deciding whether he was worth killing. Everyone's talking about that look, Sarah said. People are trying to figure out who she is, why she moved like that. Some guys are saying she's got training, military training. She does, Brad said. She's a Navy SEAL. The table went silent. That's impossible, Marcus finally said. I mean, I know women are allowed in special operations now, but she graduated BUDS at 22, youngest female in program history, 3 combat deployments, more combat experience than all of us combined. Brad's voice was flat, mechanical, and I grabbed her because she hurt my feelings. Tyler's face had gone pale. Sir, I've been thinking about something. My girlfriend Jessica, she's a Marine, infantry. She tells me about the stuff she deals with, guys not taking her seriously, guys thinking she's just there for diversity quotas, guys waiting for her to fail. And Brad already knew where this was going. And I've been one of those guys. I've made jokes. I've questioned whether women should be in combat roles. I've said things about standards being lowered. Tyler's voice cracked. I watched you last night and I saw myself, and it made me sick. Sarah nodded. We've all done it, made assumptions, judged people by what they look like instead of what they can do. She looked at Brad. But we can be better. We have to be better. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I looked her up. Lieutenant Commander Chen. There's not much public information, but what's there is insane. She's got a bachelor's in computer science from Stanford, master's in strategic studies from Naval War College. She speaks Arabic, Farsi, and Mandarin. She's a qualified sniper, a jump master, a dive supervisor. He looked up. She's everything we pretend to be. Brad felt something break inside him. I called her a bitch. I grabbed her. I tried to make her feel small because she made me feel small. And she could have ended me right there. Could have broken my arm, my face, whatever she wanted. But she didn't, because she's a better person than I am. So what do we do? Tyler asked. We learn, Sarah said. We do better. We become the kind of officers who see people for what they are, not what we expect them to be. Brad's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Commander Hutchins. This is Commander Hayes Devgrew. Lieutenant Commander Chen asked me to pass along a message. She says you should stop beating yourself up and start figuring out how to be better. She says shame without change is just self-indulgence. Thought you should know. Brad showed the message to his crew. She's giving you a second chance, Marcus said. Don't screw it up. The NJP hearing at 1400 was brief and brutal. Captain Vance read the charges presented, the evidence heard Brad's admission of guilt. The sentence came down exactly as promised, half month's pay for 2 months, letter of reprimand, mandatory counseling and training. You're lucky, Commander, Vance said as she signed the paperwork. Most officers don't get second chances. Use yours wisely. That evening, Brad sat in his apartment with a blank piece of paper and a pen. Writing the apology letter to Lieutenant Commander Chen felt impossible. What words could possibly convey his remorse, his shame, his desperate hope that someday he might become someone worthy of her forgiveness? He started 7 times, threw away 7 drafts. Finally, he wrote simply, Lieutenant Commander Chen, I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately express. I assaulted you. I disrespected your service. I compromised your mission. I did all of this because I allowed my ego and insecurity to override my judgment and my values. There is no excuse, no justification, no explanation that matters. You gave me a second chance when I deserved none. I will not waste it. I will spend every remaining day of my career learning to be the kind of officer you already are. I will teach others not to make my mistakes. I will become better. Not because I want forgiveness, I don't deserve it, but because the Navy deserves better than what I showed you that night. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your restraint. Thank you for the lesson. Respectfully, LCDR Bradley Hutchins. He sealed the letter, addressed it to Nav Specwarcom, and dropped it in the mail slot before he could second-guess himself. His phone rang. It was his father. Brad, I heard about what happened. Of course he had. Captain Richard Hutchins, retired, still had friends in the Navy. Still heard all the gossip. Dad, I don't want to... You grabbed a SEAL Bradley, a decorated combat veteran. What the hell were you thinking? I wasn't thinking. I was drunk and stupid, and you were afraid. His father's voice was quiet now. You were afraid that all your service, all your sacrifice didn't mean anything. And when that woman dismissed you, it confirmed your worst fear, that you're ordinary, that you're forgettable, that you don't matter. Brad's throat tightened. Yeah, that's exactly it. I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. His father sighed. I tried for buds twice, failed both times. First time I broke my leg in Hell Week. Second time I quit, just couldn't do it. And I spent the next 30 years of my career feeling like a failure because I couldn't be a SEAL. Brad sat up. You never told me that. I was ashamed. I built my identity around being a destroyer commander because I couldn't be what I really wanted to be. And when you joined the Navy, I was so proud. But I was also terrified you'd try for buds and fail like I did. So I steered you towards surface warfare, told you it was the smart choice, the practical choice. Dad, I robbed you of your choice because of my own insecurity, and now you're paying the price for my mistakes. His father's voice broke. I'm sorry, son. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. I made my own choices. But I shaped them. I taught you that being a SEAL was the pinnacle, the only thing that really mattered. And when you couldn't be, that you spent your career feeling like you weren't enough. His father paused. That woman you grabbed, she is what we both wished we could be. And instead of respecting that, you resented it, because she succeeded where we failed. Brad felt tears on his face. I don't know how to fix this. You start by accepting that your career isn't over. It's just different now. You can still serve. You can still matter. Just not the way you thought you would. They talked for another hour, about failure, about shame, about the crushing weight of expectations, external and internal, about what it meant to serve when you knew you'd never be the hero you'd imagined. When they finally hung up, Brad felt something shift inside him. Not healing, that would take time, but maybe the beginning of acceptance. His phone buzzed one more time. An email from Nav Specwar. Commander Hutchins, your letter was received and forwarded to Lieutenant Commander Chen. She asked me to tell you that your apology is noted and accepted. She also asked me to inform you that Naval Special Warfare Center is looking for instructors for their leadership development program. Officers with your experience and recent lessons learned would be valuable. If you're interested, contact the number below. The position is in Coronado. It's not glamorous, it's not combat, but it matters. Fair winds, Commander Hayes. Brad stared at the email for a long time. Coronado, the birthplace of SEALs. The place where he'd failed twice to earn his place. And now they were offering him a chance to return. Not as an operator, but as someone who could teach others not to make his mistakes. He picked up his phone and dialed the number. 3 weeks later, Brad stood outside the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California, watching BUDS candidates run past in the pre-dawn darkness. Their boots pounded the pavement in rhythm, their breath coming in clouds of vapor, their faces set with the kind of determination that either forged steel or shattered glass. He'd been one of them once, twice actually. Both times had ended the same way, with him ringing the bell, admitting defeat, walking away from the only thing he'd ever really wanted. Commander Hutchins. A Master Chief appeared beside him, his face weathered by decades of sun and salt. I'm Master Chief Ramos. Welcome to Coronado. Commander Hayes is waiting in his office. Brad followed him through corridors he remembered from his darkest nightmares. The smell was the same chlorine from the pool sweat from the grinder salt from the ocean. Every corner held a memory of failure. Hayes's office overlooked the Buds compound. Through the window, Brad could see instructors setting up for the day's evolution. Log PT. His chest tightened. Commander Hutchins. Hayes stood, offered his hand. Thank you for coming. Sir, I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm not sure I'm the right person for... You're exactly the right person. Sit down. Hayes gestured to a chair. You know why we brought you here? To teach leadership development. Wrong. We brought you here to teach humility. Hayes leaned back. Every year we graduate 150 to 200 officers from Annapolis and NROTC who think they understand what it means to lead. They've got their degrees, their commissions, their absolute certainty that they know better than everyone else. And then they show up at their first command and reality punches them in the face. Brad said nothing. You had that punch 3 weeks ago. You learned in the most painful way possible that your assumptions about who belongs in uniform and who doesn't were not just wrong, but dangerous. Now we need you to teach that lesson to others before they make your mistake. Sir, with respect, who's going to listen to me? My career is over. I'm a walking example of what not to do. Hayes smiled. Exactly. That's your credibility. You're not some perfect officer lecturing from on high. You're someone who screwed up, faced consequences, and chose to learn from it. That's powerful. The door opened. An older man walked in, maybe 70, with the kind of weathered dignity that only came from a lifetime of hard choices. Brad recognized him immediately from the photographs Alex had shown him. Master Chief James Chen retired, Hayes said. Alex's father. Brad stood quickly. Master Chief, I don't know what to say. Sit down, Commander. Chen's voice was gravelly warm. We're not here to relitigate what happened. We're here to talk about what happens next. Brad sat, his heart hammering. Chen took the chair beside him. My daughter told me about that night. Not just what you did, but what she saw in you. What she saw: fear, insecurity, a man drowning in his own inadequacy, lashing out at someone who represented everything he couldn't be. Chen's eyes were kind but penetrating. She said you reminded her of herself at 23, right after she graduated Buds. Brad blinked. How? Because she spent her first year in the teams terrified that everyone would realize she didn't belong, that she'd only made it through Buds because they lowered the standards, that her teammates were protecting her instead of relying on her, that she was a diversity checkbox, not a real operator. Chen leaned forward. Every day she went to work expecting to fail, expecting to be exposed as a fraud. But she's incredible. Now she is. Back then, she was a scared kid trying to prove herself to men who didn't want her there. Men like you. Chen's voice didn't carry judgment, just statement of fact. Her first platoon commander told her straight up that women didn't belong in special operations, that she'd get someone killed, that the only reason she was there was politics. Brad's stomach churned. What happened? She outlasted him. She outperformed him. She did her job so well that eventually he couldn't deny it anymore. Took him 2 years, but he came around. Last month he called her to congratulate her on her silver star. Said he was wrong about her. Said she taught him what a warrior really looks like. She gave him 2 years to learn. I got 3 weeks. Because she didn't have a choice back then. She was one of the first. She had to prove that women could do the job, period. If she destroyed that platoon commander, she would have proven everyone right that women were too emotional, too vindictive, couldn't be trusted with power. Chen's voice softened. But you're not standing in for all men. You're just one guy who made a mistake. She can afford to give you grace. Brad felt tears threatening. I don't deserve it. Probably not, but she's not offering grace because you deserve it. She's offering it because she's the kind of person who believes people can change, who believes in second chances, who believes that the military is better when we lift each other up instead of tear each other down. Chen stood. Don't waste her gift, Commander. Use it. Become someone worth her mercy. After Chen left, Hayes pulled out a folder. This is your curriculum. You'll be teaching a 2-week course called Leadership in Complex Environments. It's mandatory for all new officers heading to their first C command. You'll cover unconscious bias, inclusive leadership team dynamics, and crisis decision-making. Brad opened the folder. His hands shook as he read the course description. You'll also be doing something else, Hayes continued. Every Friday, you'll meet with a group of junior officers who've been referred for EO violations. Guys who made comments they shouldn't have. Guys who created hostile work environments. Guys who, like you, let their insecurities turn into aggression. You want me to counsel them. I want you to save them before they destroy their careers the way you almost destroyed yours. Hayes pulled up a video on his computer. This is from last month. Female ensign on her first submarine deployment. Her chief made her life hell for 6 months, constant sexual comments undermining her authority, spreading rumors. She filed a complaint. The chief got NJP and a letter of reprimand. 2 weeks later, he killed himself. Brad felt sick. His wife found a note. He said he couldn't live with the shame, couldn't face his family knowing what he'd done, couldn't see a future where he'd ever be more than the guy who harassed a woman. Hayes closed the laptop. Maybe if someone had reached him earlier, taught him to be better before it got to that point, he'd still be alive. That's your job now. Reach them early. Teach them. Save them. Brad left Hayes' office with the folder under his arm and a weight on his shoulders that felt heavier than any log he'd carried during buds. He walked to the beach, stood at the edge of the water where Hell Week candidates would be lying in the surf in a few hours, and called his father. Dad, I start teaching next week. I'm terrified. Good. Fear keeps you honest. His father's voice was steady. What's the first lesson? I don't know. The curriculum says building trust across differences, but that sounds like corporate HR bullshit. So make it real. Tell them your story. Tell them about the worst night of your life. Make them feel what you felt when you realized you'd assaulted a fellow officer. Make them understand that assumptions kill. Careers kill teams, sometimes kill people. Brad watched the waves roll in. What if they don't listen? What if I'm just another washed-up officer trying to stay relevant? Then you try again and again until someone hears you. That's what second chances look like, son. Hard work, humility, showing up even when you don't think you can make a difference. That night, Brad rewrote his first lecture. He threw out the PowerPoint slides, the academic language, the safe distance of theory. Instead, he wrote the truth. On Monday morning, he stood in front of 30 new ensigns and lieutenants, all of them fresh from their training commands, all of them confident. They were ready to lead sailors in the fleet. My name is Lieutenant Commander Brad Hutchins, he began. 3 months ago, I assaulted a fellow officer. I grabbed her without consent, called her a derogatory name, and tried to intimidate her because she wounded my ego. That officer was a Navy SEAL with 3 combat deployments and a Silver Star. I'm standing here today because she chose not to destroy me. This course exists because I need to make sure none of you make my mistake. The room went silent. For the next hour, Brad walked them through that night. The bourbon, the insecurity, the moment he grabbed Alex's arm, the sick realization afterward of what he'd done. He showed them the videos that had circulated online. He read them the NJP charges. He didn't hide anything. A young lieutenant raised his hand. Sir, how do we know we won't do the same thing? I mean, you seem like a good guy. If it can happen to you, it can happen to anyone. That's the point. I'm not some monster. I'm not a bad person. I'm just someone who let fear and insecurity override his values. And in one drunken moment, I became someone I didn't recognize. Brad looked around the room. Every one of you will face a moment like that. Maybe not exactly like mine, but similar. A moment where you're tired, stressed, scared, and someone pushes your buttons. In that moment, you'll have a choice. You can double down on your ego, or you can step back and recognize that you're about to do something you'll regret. Another hand went up. An ensign female, her face uncertain. Sir, what should we do if we see another officer doing what you did? if we see someone harassing or intimidating someone else. You speak up, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it costs you socially, because silence makes you complicit. Brad paused. I had 3 junior officers with me that night. They all saw what I was doing. One of them tried to stop me. The others stayed quiet because I was their senior officer and they didn't want to contradict me. Their silence allowed me to escalate. Their silence compromised an operation. Their silence made them part of the problem. The ensign nodded slowly. That takes courage. Yeah, it does. But you know what takes more courage? Admitting when you're wrong. Apologizing when you've hurt someone. Changing your behavior instead of defending it. Brad smiled grimly. I'm still learning that. Every day. After Class 5, officers stayed behind. 4 men, 1 woman. The woman spoke first. Sir, my first CO told me I'd never make it as a surface warfare officer because women don't have the physical presence to command respect. He made my life hell for 18 months. I almost quit. The only reason I didn't was because my XO pulled me aside and told me I was good at my job and that my CO was wrong. Did your CO ever apologize? No. He transferred before I could confront him. But I think about him sometimes. Wonder if he's still out there, still telling women they don't belong, still creating hostile environments. She looked at Brad. What you're doing here, teaching people to be better before they become like him, that matters. One of the male officers cleared his throat. Sir, I need to tell you something. Last month I made a joke about a female petty officer's appearance. She reported it. I got counseled. And I was pissed because I thought she was being too sensitive. But listening to your story today, I realize I was wrong. I created an environment where she felt unsafe. I did that, not her. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to apologize, for real, not just a sorry if I offended you non-apology. A real acknowledgement that I was wrong and that I'll do better. Brad felt something loosen in his chest. That's good. That's how we change the culture. One apology at a time. One behavior correction at a time. That Friday, Brad met his first counseling group. 6 junior officers, all referred for EO violations. They sat in a circle, defensive and angry, waiting for another lecture about political correctness and sensitivity training. Brad sat down across from them. I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to tell you that I understand why you're pissed. You think you're being punished for normal behavior. You think the rules changed and nobody told you. You think you're the victim of oversensitive people who can't take a joke. Am I close? Nods around the circle. Good. Because I thought the same thing. Right up until the moment I realized I'd assaulted a fellow officer and compromised a national security operation. Then I realized the rules didn't change. I just never learned them in the first place. A lieutenant junior grade spoke up, his voice hostile. So you're saying we're all in the wrong, that we just have to accept that everything we say or do will offend someone? No. I'm saying you need to think about impact instead of intent. You can intend a harmless joke, but if that joke makes someone feel unsafe or unwelcome, your intent doesn't matter. The impact does. That's impossible to manage. We can't control how people feel. You're right. You can't control feelings, but you can control behavior. You can choose words that build teams instead of dividing them. You can choose actions that create trust instead of resentment. You can choose to be the kind of leader people want to follow instead of the kind they're forced to tolerate. Brad leaned forward. And if you can't do that, if your ego is more important than your team's cohesion, then you're not the leader the Navy needs. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, a different officer spoke. What happened to the SEAL you assaulted? Did she leave the Navy? No. She's still serving, still deployed, still doing the kind of work that saves American lives. Brad's voice was quiet. She's everything I pretended to be, and she gave me a second chance to become someone worth her forgiveness. Do you think you'll ever earn it? I don't know, but I'm going to spend the rest of my career trying. The weeks turned into months. Brad taught his classes, counseled his officers, and slowly built something that felt like purpose. He wasn't a SEAL. He'd never be one. But he could teach people to be better than he'd been. That had to count for something. One evening in April, 6 months after that night at the Iron Anchor, Brad got an email from an address he didn't recognize. Commander Hutchins, this is Lieutenant Commander Chen. I wanted you to know that the officer I was tracking at Norfolk was arrested last week. The operation I thought was compromised actually wasn't. We used the attention from your incident as cover to move our surveillance closer. He never suspected. Sometimes what looks like failure is actually setup. I thought you should know that your worst moment contributed to something good. Also, I hear you're doing well at Ness Outdoor Center. Commander Hayes speaks highly of your work. Keep it up. The Navy needs more officers willing to admit they were wrong and do the hard work of becoming better. Fair winds, Alex. Brad read the email 3 times, then called his father. Dad, she said my failure helped them, that they used the attention from that night as cover. Of course they did. She's an operator. She knows how to use every asset, even the mistakes. His father's voice was warm. Son, I'm proud of you. Not for what you did that night, but for what you've done since. I'm teaching guys not to be like me. That's not exactly heroic. It's the most important work in the Navy. We can train people to shoot, to navigate, to operate equipment. But teaching them to be decent human beings, to treat each other with respect, to see past their prejudices, that's the hard work. That's what actually keeps teams alive in combat. Brad looked out his window at the Buds compound. Another class was in Hell Week. He could hear the surf torture from here, the instructors yelling, the candidates pushing through pain towards something most would never achieve. Dad, do you think I wasted my career, all these years chasing something I couldn't have, and now I'm just teaching people not to screw up the way I did? I think you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, not what you wanted, not what you planned, but what the Navy needs from you right now. His father paused. That's what service means, Brad. Doing what's needed, not what's glorious. That night, Brad wrote in his journal for the first time since the incident. He wrote about shame, about failure, about the long road of becoming someone different than who he'd been. He wrote about Alex, about her grace, about the gift of a second chance he still didn't understand how to repay. And he wrote about hope. That maybe, just maybe, he could take the worst moment of his life and turn it into something that helped others avoid their own worst moments. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. But it was progress. And right now, progress was enough. His phone buzzed. A text from Tyler, who'd transferred to a destroyer in San Diego. Sir, I used your lesson today. One of my sailors made a comment about a female petty officer. I pulled him aside, told him about you and Lieutenant Commander Chen, told him about choices and consequences. He apologized, for real. Thank you for teaching me to speak up. Brad smiled. This was the work, not glory, not recognition. Just one conversation at a time, one officer at a time, slowly changing a culture that had needed changing for decades. He texted back, "Proud of you. Keep it up. That's leadership." Another message came through, this one from Marcus. Just found out my new CO is a woman. LCDR Chen's words keep running through my head about people who don't look dangerous being the most dangerous. I'm going in with an open mind. Wish me luck. Then Sarah. Started seeing the base counselor, talking about internalized misogyny, about how I survived by becoming one of the guys, about how that hurt other women. It's hard work, but necessary. Thank you for showing me it's okay to examine yourself. Brad set his phone down and walked to his window. Outside, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly, dark and deep. Somewhere out there, Alex was on another mission, saving lives, doing the work that would never make headlines, never earn public recognition, never receive the gratitude it deserved. And here in Coronado, Brad was doing his own work. Smaller, less dramatic, but maybe in its own way just as important. He thought about the officers he'd taught today, the conversations he'd facilitated, the moment when a young lieutenant had admitted he'd been wrong about his female subordinate and had committed to doing better. That was worth something. That was progress. That was how cultures changed, not through grand gestures, but through thousands of small decisions to be better than yesterday. Brad picked up his phone one more time and typed a message to Alex. Thank you for everything. I'm trying to earn it. He didn't expect a response. But 3 minutes later, His phone buzzed. You already are. Keep going. 9 months after that night at the Iron Anchor, Brad was in his office reviewing counseling notes when his phone rang. Commander Hayes, his voice urgent. Brad, I need you at the admin building in 10 minutes. We have a situation. What kind of situation? The kind where your past and present just crashed into each other. Move. Brad jogged across the compound, his mind racing through possibilities. When he entered Hayes's office, he found 3 people waiting. Hayes, Master Chief Ramos, and a young petty officer, second class he'd never seen before. The kid couldn't be older than 23, his face pale, his hands shaking. Commander Hutchins, this is Petty Officer Mason. He's in Bud's Class 364. He's got something to tell you. Mason wouldn't meet Brad's eyes. Sir, I messed up. I messed up bad. Talk to me. There's a woman in my class. Petty Officer Richardson. She's been crushing it top 5 in PT fastest swim times, never quit on any evolution. But some of the guys they've been talking, saying she's getting special treatment, saying the instructors are going easy on her, saying she's only here because of politics. Brad's stomach tightened. And last night during evening chow, I said something. I said maybe if she focused less on proving a point and more on being a team player, the class would function better. I said women in buds create drama and division, and that she should quit before she gets someone hurt. The room went silent. She heard you, Brad said. Mason nodded miserably. She was right behind me. I didn't know. But that's no excuse because I should never have said it in the first place. She didn't say anything, just walked past me and sat down. But this morning she rang the bell. Brad felt like he'd been punched. She quit. Yeah, 3 weeks from Hell Week, top performer in her class, and she quit because of what I said. Mason's voice cracked. The instructors pulled me in, said I created a hostile environment, said I violated the honor code, said I might be rolled back or dropped from training entirely. Hayes spoke up. We're trying to decide what to do with him. That's why you're here. Brad looked at Mason, saw himself 9 months ago, scared, ashamed, desperate for someone to tell him he could fix this. Where is she now, Richardson? Student barracks. She's out processing. I need to talk to her. Hayes frowned. Brad, that might not be. I need to talk to her, please. Hayes studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Master Chief, take him to the barracks. But Brad, don't make promises you can't keep. Richardson was sitting on a stripped bunk, her sea bag packed, when Brad and Master Chief Ramos found her. She looked up, her eyes red but dry. She'd finished crying. Petty Officer Richardson, I'm Lieutenant Commander Hutchins. Can we talk? She stood at attention. Sir, there's nothing to talk about. I'm done. You were 3 weeks from Hell Week. Top 5 in your class. Why quit now? Because I can't do this for 4 more years, sir. I can't spend every day proving I deserve to be here. I can't listen to my teammates question whether I'm good enough, whether I'm a diversity hire, whether I'm going to get them killed. I'm exhausted, so I'm done. Brad felt Master Chief Ramos shift beside him, but he pressed on. What if I told you that Petty Officer Mason is being held accountable, that he's facing consequences for what he said? It doesn't matter. There will be another Mason, and another, and another. Because the problem isn't one guy making one comment. The problem is a culture that makes guys like him think comments like that are okay. Richardson's voice was steady, resigned. I'm good at this job, sir. I know I am, but I'm tired of fighting my own team before I even get to fight the enemy. I understand that, more than you know. Respectfully, sir, I don't think you do. Brad took a breath. 9 months ago, I assaulted a female Navy SEAL because she wounded my ego. I grabbed her, called her names, tried to intimidate her. I did exactly what Mason did to you, except worse because I put my hands on her. Richardson's eyes widened. You're that commander, the one from the videos. Yeah, that's me. And that SEAL could have destroyed my career, my life, everything. But she didn't. She gave me a second chance. And I've spent the last 9 months trying to earn it. Good for you, sir. But that doesn't change my situation. You're right. It doesn't. But let me ask you something. Do you think that Seal ever wanted to quit? Do you think she ever got tired of proving herself? Probably. I know she did. Her father told me. She spent her first 2 years in the teams convinced she was a fraud, convinced she didn't belong, convinced that everyone was just waiting for her to fail. Brad moved closer. But she didn't quit. You know why? Why? Because she knew that every woman who came after her would have it easier if she survived, if she proved that women could do the job, if she made it impossible for people to say women don't belong in special operations. Richardson's jaw tightened. So I'm supposed to suffer so other women don't have to. That's not fair. You're absolutely right. It's not fair. It's brutal and exhausting, and you shouldn't have to do it. Brad's voice softened. But if you quit now, Mason wins. And every guy like him wins. Because they'll say, see, women can't handle the pressure. Women aren't tough enough. Women don't belong. But if you stay, if you make it through Hell Week, if you earn your trident, you prove them all wrong. I can't do 4 years of this, sir. Then do 4 weeks. Get through Hell Week. After that, you can quit if you want. Nobody will question your toughness. Nobody will say you couldn't hack it. But give yourself the chance to finish what you started. Richardson was silent for a long moment. What happens to Mason? That's up to the command, but I'll be working with him, teaching him why what he said was wrong, helping him understand the impact of his words. You think he can change? I changed. I'm still changing every day. Brad met her eyes. The question isn't whether he can change. The question is whether you're going to let his ignorance rob you of something you've worked years to achieve. Richardson looked at her packed sea bag, then back at Brad. If I stay and I make it through Hell Week and earn my trident, I'm going to hold you to helping other women. I'm going to hold you to making sure that the next Richardson doesn't have to have this conversation. Deal. She picked up her phone and made a call. Master Chief Kowalski, this is Richardson. I need to talk to you about reinstating me to training. After she hung up, she looked at Brad. I'm going to regret this, aren't I? Probably, but you'll regret quitting more. As they walked back across the compound, Master Chief Ramos spoke quietly. That was good work, but you just made her a target. Every guy in that class is going to be watching her now, waiting for her to fail. I know. That's why we're going to make sure she doesn't fail. And that's why Petty Officer Mason is going to be the first person to support her. Ramos raised an eyebrow. You think you can make that happen? I'm going to try. Back in Hayes' office, Brad found Mason still sitting in the same chair, looking like he was waiting for execution. Petty Officer Mason, you and I are going to have a conversation. Several conversations, actually. But first I need to know, do you actually believe what you said about Petty Officer Richardson? Or were you just talking to fit in? Mason hesitated. I don't know, sir. I guess I was repeating what I've heard other guys say. About women in special operations. About standards being lowered. About whether women belong. Yeah. Have you ever seen Richardson fail in evolution? No, sir. Has she ever quit on her team? No, sir. Has she ever asked for special treatment? No, sir. So everything you said about her was based on assumptions and rumors, not actual evidence of her performance. Mason's face crumpled. Yes, sir. And I feel like garbage about it. Good. You should. Brad pulled a chair around and sat directly in front of Mason. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Richardson. Not a sorry if I offended you apology. A real apology where you acknowledge specifically what you did wrong and commit to doing better. Yes, sir. Then you're going to be her biggest supporter for the rest of training. When other guys talk trash about her, you're going to shut it down. When she's struggling with an evolution, you're going to help her. When Hell Week comes, you're going to make sure she has what she needs to survive. Mason looked up confused. Sir, why would she trust me after what I said? She probably won't. But you're going to earn that trust through your actions, not your words. You're going to prove that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define us, that we can be better than our worst moments. What if I can't? What if I mess up again? Then you'll apologize again and try harder. That's how this works. There's no magic moment where you're suddenly perfect. There's just 1,000 small decisions to be better than you were yesterday. Hayes spoke up. Mason, you're getting a second chance here. Most commands would have dropped you from training already. The only reason you're still here is because Commander Hutchins vouched for you. Don't make him regret it. I won't, sir. I promise. After Mason left, Hayes looked at Brad. You sure about this? You're putting your credibility on the line for a kid you just met. Someone did the same for me. Time to pay it forward. The next morning, Brad attended the Buds class formation. Richardson was back in ranks, her face set with determination. Mason stood 3 positions down from her, his eyes forward, his jaw tight. The class instructor, a senior chief with 23 years in the teams, called them to attention. We had an incident this week, an incident that reminded me why we have honor and integrity as core values. Petty Officer Mason created a hostile environment through his words. He violated the trust of his teammate and this class. Mason stood rigid, bracing for the hammer to fall. He also took responsibility for his actions. He apologized. He committed to doing better. That takes courage. The senior chief paused. In the teams, we don't expect perfection. We expect accountability. We expect growth. Mason screwed up. He owned it. Now we watch to see if his actions match his words. The senior chief's eyes moved to Richardson. Petty Officer Richardson decided to return to training. That also takes courage. This class will support her. This class will ensure she has every opportunity to succeed or fail based on her own performance, not on anyone's prejudice. Clear. Hoo-yah, Senior Chief. Outstanding. Now get to the grinder. Log PT in 5 minutes. Brad watched from the observation deck as the class moved as one unit toward the grinder. Richardson fell in naturally. Mason 2 positions behind her. They lifted the log, held it overhead, and the instructor started calling cadence. This is the easy part, Master Chief Ramos said beside Brad. Hell Week is where we'll see what they're really made of. She'll make it. You sound certain. I am. She's got something most people don't. She's got something to prove to herself, not to anyone else. That's the difference between people who quit and people who endure. 2 weeks later, Hell Week began. Brad wasn't officially part of the instructor cadre, but Hayes had invited him to observe. He stood on the beach at midnight as the class was shocked from sleep by gunfire and explosions, watching as 60 candidates stumbled into the surf. Richardson was in the front rank, her face invisible in the darkness, but her body language unmistakable. Ready, committed, unbreakable. The first 3 days were chaos. Candidates quit in pairs and clusters. The cold, the exhaustion, the unending physical punishment, it broke people in waves. By day 4, the class was down to 32 candidates. Richardson was still there. So was Mason. Brad watched them during surf torture, both of them shaking so hard their teeth chattered audibly from 50 feet away. The instructors were screaming, telling them they could quit. That warmth was just a bell ring away, that nobody would judge them for making the smart choice. Richardson's eyes were closed, her lips moving. Brad realized she was counting. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Just making it through the next second, then the next, then the next. Mason was beside her, and Brad saw him lean slightly in her direction. Not touching that would be interference, but present. Solid. A reminder she wasn't alone. On day 5, with Hell Week nearly over, the class was down to 27 candidates. They were in the pool treading water in full combat gear when Richardson started to sink. Brad's heart stopped. He moved to the edge of the pool, ready to jump in, but an instructor was already there. Richardson, you good? She surfaced, gasping. Good, instructor. You sure? Bell's right there. No shame in it. I'm good. But Brad could see she wasn't good. Her movements were sluggish, her coordination off. Hypothermia was setting in. She had maybe 10 more minutes before her body shut down. Mason saw it too. He moved closer, positioning himself where Richardson could use him as a visual reference point. Every time she started to drift, started to sink, Mason would splash, would move, would give her something to focus on. The instructors saw it. chose not to intervene. This was what they wanted to see, teammates supporting teammates. Richardson made it through the evolution, barely, but she made it. That night, after the class was secured for a few hours of sleep, Brad found Mason outside the barracks. That was good work today, in the pool. Mason looked exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. She was sinking. I couldn't let her quit. Not after everything. You could have ignored her, focused on your own survival. No, sir. I couldn't. Because if she quits because I didn't help her, then I'm still the guy who drove her out. I'm still the problem. Mason's voice was raw. I need her to make it. I need to know that I didn't destroy her dream. You didn't. She's still here, still fighting. But I almost did, and I have to live with that. Hey. Brad put a hand on Mason's shoulder. Yeah, you do. But you also get to live with the fact that when it mattered most, when she needed someone to believe in her, you were there. That counts for something. Hell Week ended at 1800 on Friday. 24 candidates remained. Richardson was one of them. So was Mason. They stood in formation, swaying with exhaustion as the Commodore addressed them. You are now members of a very small community. You have proven that you have what it takes to be a SEAL. But earning the trident is just the beginning. Now comes the hard part, learning to be worthy of it. After the ceremony, after the families and press had left, Richardson found Brad standing by the ocean. Sir, I wanted to thank you for that conversation in the barracks, for giving me a reason to stay. You gave yourself a reason to stay. I just reminded you it was there. Mason helped me during pool week. I was done. I was going to quit, and he wouldn't let me. He's learning. We all are. Richardson was quiet for a moment. The SEAL you assaulted, did you ever apologize to her face? No, she's deployed. I've written to her, but we've never spoken in person. You should, when she gets back. You should tell her what her mercy meant to you, what it's meant to everyone you've helped, because she gave you the chance. Maybe I will. Richardson smiled, tired but genuine. She sounds like someone I'd like to meet someday. She'd like you. You remind me of her. Stubborn, tough, unwilling to let anyone else define your limits. Is that a compliment, sir? The highest one I can give. 3 months later, Brad got an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Coming home." Commander Hutchins, my deployment ends next week. I'll be at DevGru headquarters for debrief on the 15th. If you're available, I'd like to meet. We have things to discuss. Alex. Brad stared at the email for 10 minutes, his heart racing. She wanted to meet. After everything, after 9 months of teaching and learning and trying to become someone worthy of her grace, she wanted to meet. He replied immediately, I'll be there. Thank you for the opportunity. On the 15th, Brad arrived at the DevGru compound 2 hours early. He paced outside the main building, rehearsing what he'd say, discarding every version as inadequate. Finally, at 1400, a black SUV pulled up. The door opened, and Alex stepped out. She looked different from that night at the bar, leaner, harder, with new lines around her eyes and a scar on her left forearm that hadn't been there before. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, and navy hoodie running shoes, but she moved like a weapon, every step controlled and deliberate. Their eyes met. Brad felt his throat close. Lieutenant Commander Chen, thank you for meeting me. Commander Hutchins. She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. Let's walk. They walked the perimeter of the compound in silence for several minutes. Finally, Alex spoke. Commander Hayes tells me you've been doing good work, teaching officers, counseling candidates, building a culture that's better than the one that existed when you grabbed my arm. I'm trying, every day. I heard about Richardson, about how you convinced her to stay, about how you turned Mason from a problem into part of the solution. Mason did that himself. I just showed him it was possible. Alex stopped walking, turned to face him. Why did you do it? Why spend your time and energy helping people who've made the same mistakes you did? Wouldn't it be easier to just focus on your own redemption? Brad met her eyes. Because it's not about me anymore. It's about making sure the next officer doesn't grab the next you. It's about creating a Navy where people like Richardson don't have to choose between their dreams and their dignity. It's about being part of the solution instead of the problem. Do you think you've succeeded? I don't know, but I'm going to keep trying until I do. Alex nodded slowly. Good answer. She started walking again. I want to tell you something. That night at the bar when you grabbed me, I knew exactly who you were. Brad stopped. What? I'd been watching you for 2 weeks as part of my operation. You were friends with one of my targets, someone who worked near your ship. I knew your routine, your habits, your crew. I knew you drank at the Iron Anchor every Thursday. I knew you'd had a bad fitness report. I knew you'd been passed over for promotion. She looked at him. And I knew that if I sat at that bar long enough looking vulnerable enough, someone would approach me. I didn't know it would be you, but I wasn't surprised. Brad felt dizzy. You let me grab you. I assessed the threat level and determined you weren't actually dangerous, just drunk and insecure. I could have stopped you at any point, but I needed to maintain my cover, and honestly, I wanted to see how far you'd go. So it was a test. No, it was an operational necessity. But afterward, when I saw the consequences catching up to you, when I saw you actually trying to learn from it, that's when it became something else. What? An opportunity. To see if someone like you could change. If shame could become growth instead of resentment. Alex smiled slightly. You passed. I assaulted you. I don't deserve to pass anything. You made a mistake. You faced consequences. You chose to become better instead of bitter. That's passing. She stopped in front of a memorial wall, names of fallen SEALs etched in black granite. These men and women died protecting people who'll never know their names. They died doing the right thing in the hardest circumstances. That's the standard. Not perfection, not never making mistakes, but being willing to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. Brad looked at the names, hundreds of them, spanning decades of wars and operations. I'll never be like them. You're already more like them than you think. You sacrificed your ego, your comfortable narrative, your easy future. You chose the hard path of changing yourself instead of the easy path of blaming everyone else. That takes courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel ashamed. Good. Shame means you understand the weight of what you did. Use that weight. Let it push you forward, not hold you back. They stood in silence for a moment, both of them reading names of warriors who'd given everything. Finally, Alex said, I'm going back to the teams next month, another deployment, probably Syria again. And I wanted to meet you before I left because I wanted to see for myself if you'd actually changed or if you were just performing change to avoid consequences. And I think you're genuinely trying, which means my mercy wasn't wasted. She turned to face him fully. So here's what I need from you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep teaching. Keep learning. Keep being honest about your failures. Because the military needs people like you. People who've screwed up and owned it more than it needs people who pretend they're perfect. I will. I promise. Don't promise me. Promise yourself. Promise every young officer who sits in your classroom. Promise every Richardson who wants to serve but doesn't know if they can survive the culture. Alex's voice was firm. Promise them that you'll fight to make the Navy a place where capability matters more than demographics, where respect is earned through performance, not granted through prejudice, where women like me can serve without constantly proving we belong. I promise. Alex extended her hand again. Then we're good. You and me were square. Brad shook her hand, felt the strength in her grip, saw the absolute certainty in her eyes. This woman had killed enemy combatants, had survived combat, had done things he couldn't imagine, and she was giving him absolution he didn't deserve. Thank you for everything, for not destroying me, for giving me a chance, for... Stop. You don't owe me gratitude. You owe me results. You owe me a better Navy for the next generation. That's how you thank me. I'll do my best. I know you will. That's why I'm here. She started walking toward her SUV, then paused and looked back. Commander Hutchins, one more thing. That night at the bar when I looked at you right before you grabbed me. Do you remember what you saw? You looked like a predator, like you were deciding whether to kill me. No, I was deciding whether you were worth saving, whether there was something in you that could be salvaged, something that could become better. She smiled. Turns out there was. Don't make me regret that assessment. Then she was gone, the SUV pulling away, leaving Brad standing alone by the memorial wall with tears on his face and purpose in his heart. He pulled out his phone and called Hayes. Sir, I need to expand the program. More classes, more counseling sessions, more officers reached before they make my mistake. You've got it. How many more classes are we talking? All of them. Every junior officer in the Navy. Before they take their first command. Before they have their first crisis. Before they become who I was instead of who they could be. Hayes was quiet for a moment. That's ambitious. That's necessary. Sir, we can't keep cleaning up messes after they happen. We need to prevent them. And that means teaching every officer that the old ways don't work anymore. That the Navy is changing. That capability matters more than appearance. That respect isn't given, it's earned. Okay, let's build it. But Brad, this is going to be years of work. Probably the rest of your career. Good, because I've got a lot to make up for. Part 5. The Legacy. 2 years after that meeting at the memorial wall, Brad stood in front of the largest audience of his career. The Naval Academy's Mahan Hall was packed with 1,200 midshipmen, all of them weeks away from commissioning, all of them about to enter a fleet that would test everything they thought they knew about leadership. My name is Commander Brad Hutchins. He began, his voice steady, despite the churning in his gut. 2.5 years ago, I assaulted a fellow officer. I grabbed her without consent, called her degrading names, and tried to intimidate her because my ego couldn't handle rejection. That officer was a Navy SEAL with a silver star. I'm standing here today because she chose mercy over justice. This is the story of what I learned from the worst mistake of my life. The hall was absolutely silent. For the next 90 minutes, Brad walked them through everything. The bourbon, the insecurity, the moment his hand closed around Alex's arm, the sick realization that followed, the NJP, the career that died that night, and then the harder part, the daily work of becoming someone different, someone better, someone worthy of the second chance he'd been given. He showed them the video from that night. Let them watch him at his worst. Let them see the comments, the mockery, the complete destruction of his reputation. He didn't hide from it, didn't minimize it. Just let it sit there in the open, ugly, and undeniable. Some of you are thinking, that would never be me. I'm not that guy, Brad said. I thought the same thing, right up until I became that guy. Because here's what nobody tells you, the gap between your values and your actions isn't as wide as you think. One bad night, one moment of weakness, one decision to prioritize your ego over someone else's dignity. That's all it takes. A hand went up. A female midshipman, first row. Sir, what would you say to someone who's experiencing what that SEAL experienced? Who's being harassed or intimidated by a superior? I'd say document everything. Report it through proper channels. And know that you're not alone. There are people like Commander Hayes, like Master Chief Chen, like Captain Vance, who will stand with you. Brad paused. But I'd also say that the system isn't perfect. Sometimes good people get punished for speaking up. Sometimes bad actors get protected. And if you're not willing to accept that risk, I understand. Nobody should have to choose between their safety and their career. Another hand. A male midshipman this time. Sir, how do we know when we're creating a hostile environment versus just having tough standards? You ask, you listen, you pay attention to impact instead of intent. Brad leaned forward. If someone tells you they feel unsafe or unwelcome because of something you said or did, your intent doesn't matter. Your impact does. A good leader apologizes and adjusts. A bad leader gets defensive and doubles down. The questions kept coming. For another hour, Brad fielded everything they threw at him, questions about standards, about integration, about what happens when social change collides with military tradition. He didn't have all the answers, but he was honest about what he didn't know, honest about what he was still learning. After the talk, 50 midshipmen lined up to speak with him privately. Some wanted to share their own stories of bias and discrimination. Others wanted to confess mistakes they'd made and didn't know how to fix. A few just wanted to shake his hand and say thank you for being honest. The last person in line was a young woman, maybe 21, with the kind of quiet intensity that reminded Brad of Richardson. "Sir, I'm going to Bud's this summer. I'm terrified. Of the training, of my teammates, of being the weak link, of proving everyone right who says women don't belong." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Of becoming another statistic, another woman who tried and failed." Brad thought about Richardson, who'd made it through Hell Week and was now in SEAL qualification training. He thought about Alex deployed somewhere he couldn't name, doing work that would never make headlines. He thought about every woman who'd been told she didn't belong and chose to prove them wrong anyway. "What's your name?" "Midshipman Brooks, sir." "Brooks, you're going to face things at Bud's that will make you question everything. Your strength, your competence, your right to be there, and some of that doubt will come from inside your own head, and some will come from teammates who don't think you belong." Brad met her eyes. "But here's what I want you to remember. You didn't choose Bud's because it was easy. You chose it because it's hard, because you want to be the kind of warrior this country needs. Don't let anyone, not your instructors, not your teammates, not even yourself, convince you that you're less capable than you are. What if I fail? Then you fail. But you fail because the training beat you, not because someone else's prejudice convinced you to quit. There's honor in failing at something impossible. There's no honor in quitting because someone made you feel small." Brooks nodded, her jaw set. "Thank you, sir. I'll make you proud. Make yourself proud. That's all that matters." That evening, Brad got a call from Commander Hayes. "Just watch the recording of your academy talk. It's going viral. 500,000 views in 6 hours." Is that good or bad? Depends on who you ask. The CNO's office called. They want to expand your program. Make it mandatory for all surface warfare officers before their first department head tour. Brad felt his pulse quicken. That's thousands of officers. Closer to 10,000 over the next 5 years. You'll need a team, instructors, curriculum developers, assessment tools. Hayes paused. This is your chance to actually change the culture, Brad, to build something that lasts beyond your career. You interested? Yes, sir. Absolutely yes. Good. Because there's someone here who wants to talk to you about it. There was a rustling sound, then a familiar voice came on the line. "Commander Hutchins, this is Rear Admiral Vance. Remember me?" Brad's stomach dropped. Vance had been the captain who'd given him NJP 2 years ago. Now she was a flag officer. "Yes, ma'am, of course. I've been following your work. What you've built at Coronado is impressive, but it's not enough. We need this program fleet-wide. Every officer, every enlisted leader, every sailor who has the power to create or destroy someone else's career." Her voice was firm but not unkind. "I'm giving you the resources to build it. But I need to know, are you doing this for redemption or are you doing this because it's right?" "Both, ma'am." "Good answer. People who are only in it for redemption quit when they feel absolved. People who are in it because it's right keep going even when nobody's watching." Vance paused. "I'm making you the director of the Navy's Culture Change Initiative. You'll report directly to me, you'll have a staff of 20, and you'll have 2 years to prove this model works. If it does, we expand it across all services. If it doesn't, we shut it down and I find someone else. Clear?" "Crystal clear, ma'am." "One more thing. Lieutenant Commander Chen returns from deployment in 3 months. I want her on your team." Brad's heart stopped. "Ma'am, I don't think she'd—" "I already asked her. She said yes, conditional on you being serious about this work and not just performing contrition." Vance's voice softened slightly. "She believes in what you're building. Don't make her regret it." 3 months later, Alex walked into Brad's new office at the Pentagon. She wore her dress blues, her trident gleaming gold above a row of ribbons that told stories Brad would never fully know. The silver star, the bronze star with V device, the purple heart, the combat action ribbon. Lieutenant Commander Chen reporting as assigned, sir. Brad stood suddenly aware of how inadequate his own ribbon rack looked in comparison. Alex, you don't have to call me sir. We're working together now. I know, but I wanted to do this properly, for the record. She smiled slightly. Now that we've got the formal stuff out of the way, let's get to work. What do you need from me? Honestly, I need you to keep me honest. To call me out when I'm slipping into old patterns. To remind me what this is really about when I get caught up in bureaucracy and politics. I can do that. What else? I need you to talk to the officers we're training, to show them what a real warrior looks like, to destroy every assumption they have about who belongs in uniform. Alex sat down, crossed her legs. You want me to be your show pony, your proof that women can be warriors. No, I want you to be yourself. To let them see that competence doesn't have a gender, that toughness doesn't have a specific appearance, that the next person who saves their life might not look like what they expect. And you think that will change minds? I think it changed mine. Seeing you, knowing what you've done, understanding how completely I'd underestimated you, that destroyed every prejudice I'd built my identity around. Maybe it can do the same for others. Alex was quiet for a moment. Okay, but I have conditions. Name them. First, we don't just focus on gender. We address all forms of bias, racial, religious, age-based everything. Because the problem isn't just sexism. It's the fundamental human tendency to categorize people based on appearance and assume we know their capabilities. Agreed. Second, we measure results, not feelings, not attitudes, results. How many hostile environment complaints decrease? How many women and minorities stay in the service? How many commanders get relieved for creating toxic cultures? Her eyes were hard. I don't want to build a program that makes people feel good about themselves while nothing actually changes. We'll build metrics, track them quarterly, publish results. Third, when this program fails, and it will fail, sometimes we don't hide it. We don't spin it. We acknowledge it and learn from it. When it fails, when, not if. Culture change is messy. We're going to train officers who go back to their commands and immediately revert to old behaviors. We're going to have people game the system, check boxes without changing beliefs. We're going to face resistance from senior leaders who think we're making the military soft. Alex leaned forward. When that happens, we don't give up. We adjust. We learn. We keep pushing. Because the alternative is letting the old culture continue unchallenged. Brad nodded slowly. You've thought about this. I've lived it. For 6 years, I've been proving myself to people who didn't think I belonged. I'm tired of being the exception. I want to be normal. I want the next woman who comes through BUDS to be unremarkable. Just another operator doing the job. That's the goal. Then let's build it. Over the next 18 months, they built something unprecedented. A 2-week immersive course that put officers through scenarios designed to expose their biases and challenge their assumptions. They brought in guest speakers, women combat veterans, minority flag officers, enlisted leaders who'd overcome discrimination to reach the senior ranks. They created assessment tools that measured actual behavioral change, not just compliance with training requirements. And they failed, repeatedly, publicly. 6 months into the program, a destroyer captain who'd completed their training was relieved for creating a hostile environment. The story made national news. Critics called the program a waste of money, evidence that you couldn't train away human nature. Brad wanted to hide from it, to minimize it, to explain that one failure didn't invalidate the entire effort. Alex wouldn't let him. We hold a press conference, she said. We acknowledge that Captain Morrison completed our training and still created a toxic environment. We explain what went wrong. We show what we're changing in the curriculum to address it. We own the failure. That will destroy our credibility. No, hiding it will destroy our credibility. Owning it will show we're serious about this work. Alex's voice was firm. Culture change isn't linear. It's not clean. We're going to have failures. What matters is how we respond to them. They held the press conference. Brad stood at the podium and said words that terrified him. We failed. Captain Morrison went through our program and still created an environment where women felt unsafe. That's on us. We didn't reach him. We didn't change him. And we need to figure out why. The questions from reporters were brutal. How could they justify the program if it didn't work? How much money had been wasted? Should they shut it down? Alex stepped to the microphone. This program has trained 8,000 officers in the last year. 7,999 of them haven't been relieved for cause. Hostile environment complaints across the fleet are down 18%. Retention of women and minorities is up 12%. One failure doesn't erase those successes. It teaches us how to do better. A reporter pushed back. But shouldn't we expect better than a 99% success rate when it comes to preventing harassment? Yes, Alex said simply. And we're working toward that. But culture change takes time. This is generational work. We're teaching people to unlearn prejudices they've held their entire lives. Some will embrace it immediately. Some will take years. And some, like Captain Morrison, may never change. Our job is to reach as many as we can and hold accountable those we can't reach. The press conference went viral, not because of the failure, but because of their response to it. Officers started reaching out, sharing their own stories of bias and discrimination, offering to help improve the program. Retired flag officers wrote op-eds supporting the initiative. Even some critics admitted that the transparency was refreshing. A year and a half into the program, Brad got a call from Midshipman Brooks. She'd graduated buds, made it through Hell Week, earned her trident. Sir, I wanted to thank you for that conversation at the academy, for telling me not to let anyone make me feel small. You did the work, Brooks. I just reminded you that you could. There were days I wanted to quit. Days when my teammates made me feel like I didn't belong. Days when I believed them. Her voice was thick with emotion. But I remembered what you said, that there's honor in failing at something impossible, but no honor in quitting because someone else convinced you to. So I stayed, and now I'm a SEAL. How do your teammates treat you now? Most of them are great. A few still have doubts. But I'm proving myself every day, not to them, to myself. That's all you can do. Sir, one more thing. There's a girl in the next Buds class. She's struggling. Not with the physical stuff, she's crushing that, but with the mental game, with the constant doubt. Can I give her your number? Give her mine and Lieutenant Commander Chen's. Between us, we'll help her through it. Brooks paused. Is it true that Lieutenant Commander Chen is the SEAL you assaulted? Yeah, that's true. And now you work together. Yeah. That's really something, sir. That gives me hope. That people can change that much. That mistakes don't have to be permanent. After they hung up, Brad found Alex in her office reviewing assessment data from their latest training cohort. Brooks made it. She's a SEAL now. Alex looked up, a smile breaking across her face. That's fantastic. How's she handling it? Like you did. One day at a time, proving herself constantly. It gets easier. Once she's deployed, once she's done the job in real conditions, the doubts fade. Her own and everyone else's. Alex set down her tablet. But it shouldn't take a combat deployment to prove you belong. That's what we're trying to fix. Do you think we're actually fixing it? Or are we just putting a band-aid on a broken culture? Little of both, probably. But band-aids matter when you're bleeding out. We're stopping the worst behaviors. We're giving people tools to recognize their biases. We're creating space for conversations that couldn't happen before. Alex stood, walked to the window. Is it enough? No. Will it ever be enough? Maybe not, but it's more than existed 3 years ago when you grabbed my arm in that bar. Brad joined her at the window. Do you ever regret it? Giving me a second chance. Joining this program, spending your time teaching people not to be assholes when you could be deployed doing real work. This is real work. Teaching officers to create inclusive environments to recognize and counter their biases, to build teams based on competence instead of comfort. That's as real as anything I did in Syria. Alex glanced at him. And no, I don't regret it. Because for every Brooks who makes it through buds, for every Mason who learns to be better, for every hostile environment that doesn't get created because someone took our training seriously, those are real impacts. Lives changed. Careers saved. People who get to serve without constantly proving they deserve to be there. I just worry that we're not doing enough, that the culture is too entrenched, that we're fighting a losing battle. We probably are. Culture change is a losing battle until suddenly it isn't, until the people who resist change retire or die, and the people who embrace change become the new normal. Alex turned to face him fully. You know what my father told me when I graduated Buds? He said, "You're not doing this for the men who doubt you. You're doing it for the girls who'll come after you, for the ones who'll see what you did and realize they can do it too." That's a lot of pressure. That's leadership, knowing that your actions ripple forward, that the culture you create, the standards you set, the behaviors you model, they all influence the next generation and the next. Brad's phone buzzed. A text from Tyler, who was now a department head on a cruiser in Japan. "Sir, used your de-escalation techniques today. One of my sailors was harassing a female petty officer. Old me would have just given him a talking to and moved on. Instead, I counseled him, documented it, and referred him to the ship's EO. He's now in mandatory training. The petty officer thanked me for taking it seriously. Your lessons are spreading." Brad showed the text to Alex. "See, that's impact. That's culture change. One officer, one intervention, one woman who doesn't have to choose between her safety and her career." Alex smiled. "We're winning, Brad, slowly, incrementally, but we're winning." 6 months later, Brad stood in the rose garden of the White House. He wore his dress blues, his hands clasped behind his back, his heart hammering as the President of the United States approached the microphone. Today we recognize the work of the Navy's Culture Change Initiative, a program that has trained over 15,000 officers and enlisted leaders in the past 2 years. This program has measurably reduced hostile environment incidents, improved retention of diverse personnel, and created a fleet culture that values capability over conformity. The President turned to where Brad and Alex stood with their team. "Commander Hutchins, Lieutenant Commander Chen, would you please step forward?" They approached together. Brad felt like he was moving through water, everything slow and surreal. Commander Hutchins came to this work through failure, through recognizing that his own biases had led him to harm a fellow officer. Instead of hiding from that failure, he transformed it into a mission to ensure that no other officer would make his mistake. The President looked directly at Brad. That takes courage. Not the courage of combat, but the courage of admitting you were wrong and dedicating your life to making it right. Then the President turned to Alex. "Lieutenant Commander Chen represents the future of our military. A warrior whose competence is undeniable, whose service is exemplary, whose dedication to making our forces stronger and more inclusive serves as a model for all who wear the uniform." She could have destroyed the career of the man who assaulted her. Instead, she gave him the chance to become better. And in doing so, she created a ripple effect that has touched thousands of lives. The President held up 2 medals. "It is my honor to present both of you with the Defense Meritorious Service Medal for your work in transforming military culture and creating pathways for all qualified individuals to serve with dignity and respect." After the ceremony, after the photographs and handshakes and congratulations, Brad and Alex stood together on the steps of the West Wing. "You know what's funny," Brad said. 3 years ago, I would have killed for this moment. A medal from the President. Recognition for my service. Proof that I mattered. And now I realize this isn't about me. It's about every officer sitting in my classroom learning to be better. Every Brooks fighting through Hell Week. Every Richardson refusing to quit. Every Mason learning that mistakes don't have to define you. Brad looked at the medal in his hands. This belongs to them. All of them. "Then let's get back to work," Alex said. "We've got another training cohort starting Monday. 50 officers who think they know everything about leadership. Let's show them they don't." They walked down the steps together, 2 officers bound by the strangest of connections. One who'd failed catastrophically and chosen growth. one who'd succeeded brilliantly and chosen mercy. Behind them, the White House gleamed in the afternoon sun. Ahead of them, the work continued. The teaching, the learning, the slow, grinding process of changing a culture one mind at a time. Brad thought about that night at the Iron Anchor, about the moment his hand had closed around Alex's arm, about the sick certainty that his life was over. His old life had ended that night, but a new one had begun. A life defined not by what he'd done wrong, but by what he chose to do afterward. Not by his failures, but by his refusal to let those failures be the end of his story. And maybe that was the real lesson. Not that people couldn't change, but that change required courage, required humility, required the willingness to face the worst parts of yourself and choose to be better. 2 weeks later, Brad stood in front of his next training class. 75 officers, all of them eager and confident and certain they knew how to lead. "My name is Commander Brad Hutchins," he began. 3 years ago, I assaulted a fellow officer. I grabbed her, called her names, tried to intimidate her because I couldn't handle rejection. That officer was Lieutenant Commander Alexis Chen, a Navy SEAL standing right behind me. She could have destroyed me. Instead, she taught me the most important lesson of my career, that warriors come in all forms, that strength includes admitting weakness, and that the most powerful thing you can do for someone is give them the chance to become who they're meant to be. Alex stepped forward, her trident catching the light, her ribbons telling stories of valor these officers could only imagine. "This course isn't about political correctness," she said. "It's not about feelings or sensitivity or making anyone comfortable. It's about mission effectiveness. It's about building teams where everyone, regardless of gender, race, religion, or background, can contribute their full capability without fear or limitation. Because the enemies we face don't care about our internal divisions. They only care whether we're strong enough to defeat them. And we're only strong when we use every asset available, when we recognize talent wherever it appears, when we choose competence over comfort." For the next 2 weeks, Brad and Alex taught them, challenged them, broke down their assumptions, and rebuilt them into something stronger. And when those 75 officers returned to their commands, they carried forward the lesson that Brad had learned in the hardest way possible. That respect isn't demanded, it's earned. That warriors don't all look the same. That strength means lifting others up, not tearing them down. That the most important battles aren't fought on foreign shores, but in the daily choices to be better than your prejudices, braver than your fears, and worthy of the uniform you wear. Years later, when Brad retired after 30 years of service, he stood one last time at the memorial wall in Coronado. The names of fallen warriors stretched before him, a reminder of what real sacrifice looked like. Alex stood beside him now, a full commander, still serving, still fighting, still proving every day that she belonged. "You did good work," she said quietly. "Thousands of officers trained, culture shifted, lives changed. You earned your second chance. We earned it, you and me, everyone who believed that people could be better." "So what's next for you?" Brad smiled. "I'm going to write. Tell this story. Not to glorify myself, but to show others that redemption is possible, that mistakes don't have to be permanent, that the worst moment of your life can become the catalyst for your best work." "Will you tell the truth? All of it? How badly you screwed up? Every word? Because the only way this story helps anyone is if I'm honest about how far I fell before I learned to climb." Alex extended her hand one final time. "Then you've got my permission. Tell them everything. Tell them that the woman you assaulted became your teacher. That mercy is stronger than vengeance. That second chances aren't given, they're built through years of hard work and humility." They shook hands, and Brad felt the circle complete. From that night at the Iron Anchor to this moment at the memorial wall, he'd traveled a path he never could have imagined. A path that required him to destroy who he was in order to become who he needed to be. As he walked away from the memorial, away from the Buds compound where he'd failed twice and finally found his purpose, Brad knew one thing with absolute certainty. The strongest warriors aren't those who never fall. They're those who fall, learn why, and spend the rest of their lives teaching others not to make the same mistake. That was his mission now. That was his legacy. That was how he honored the mercy Alex had shown him 3 years ago when she stood up, revealed her Navy SEAL badge, and chose to save him instead of destroy him. And every day in every classroom with every officer who learned to see past their prejudices, that mercy multiplied forward, creating ripples that would spread through the fleet for generations to come. That was victory. Not glory. Not recognition. But the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the world was better because he'd chosen to be better. And in the end, that was the only redemption that mattered.